Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It's CFL Week 3. Ian Cameron with you. Got a bit of a sore throat, but we're powering through it. We play at less than 100% here on this show. And we got Nick Pankhurst joining us. You've seen him on this show before. He's been on with us, I think, a couple of times already in the past. And usually he's joining us from a vehicle because he's always on the move and busy as a scout looking for the next great crop of young Canadian football players. He scouts the western part of the country. For football players for the University of Toronto. But Nick, it's good to check in. Before we talk CFL, how's life with you, and how is the work grind and scouting in the ranks of football going for you?
I'm doing great, Ian, and first and foremost, thanks for having me, brother. It's been good. A lot of great kids early on here, 2026 class. It's been pretty exciting. There's a lot of good prospects. It's probably been the best class in the past 3 years. So it's really nice to get in touch with, what's happening, and just the development here is it's pretty nice just to see the grind of these kids, and especially linebackers, quarterbacks. It's very dynamic. There's actually been a few D1 signings already. I think this is the most probably in, I would say, the past decade easily. But life's been good, man. Just been ripping all over the country. Was just in sunny Kelowna the past 3 days. Did a few presentations at two high schools, Rutland and Kelowna Secondary had me. And then there's an exhibition tournament. So I got a chance to check out some talent and talk to some parents and discuss what life is like at U of T. So it's been a lot of fun the past year. How's things on your end, brother?
Good. We're getting to the point of the year, Nick, where it's a little less busy. Hockey's over. Basketball's about to end. We just have CFL going and a little baseball for the next, I would say, month and a half. But we still got to get prep done for NFL and college football south of the border. That's going to be back before you know it. So there's always stuff to do. But it's at least not like it is in November and December. You know what I'm saying? When it's NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, NHL all going at once. Mm-hmm. That's when it's hectic in my shoes. That's when you don't have much fucking time to breathe in November and December, that part of the sports year. So this is very light in comparison right now. No question about that. Let's jump right into it. We've got CFL Week 3 to discuss, and we'll begin with the first game of the week, which is in Edmonton here on this Thursday night. The Montreal Alouettes, the very impressive 2-0 Montreal Alouettes, taking on the Edmonton Elks. The Alouettes, 7-point road favorites here in this game, 48 the total. Montreal's looked awesome so far. I picked them to be in the Grey Cup, win the East Division, and represent the East in the Grey Cup. And the reason I said that is because I thought they were a pretty complete football team. And if you look at the first two victories for the Alouettes against the Argos and Red Blacks, they are a complete team because they have been able to win games in such a plethora of different ways and have everybody contribute. The offense has been good. Davis Alexander, 6-0 as a CFL starting quarterback. He won every start in place of an injured Cody Fajardo last year. And obviously this season, 2-0 to start. His first season as a number one quarterback, QB1 for the first time in his career with the Alouettes. He's been really good so far. The receiving core is terrific. We've talked about how much depth they've got. Tyson Philpott, Austin Mack, Charleston Rambo, Tyler Sneed, the kid out of East Carolina, is finally healthy. Cole Speaker. And to think they lost Keon Julian Grant, and they don't miss him because they've got so much depth elsewhere at receiver. The defense has been just as great so far up front, with Mustafa Johnson leading the way. They've been good. They've been absolutely phenomenal against the run. You just ask any of the first two opponents. The Toronto running backs couldn't get anything going against that Montreal run defense. I think they held William Standback of the Ottawa Red Blacks, former Alouette, last week to 34 rushing yards. Very, very impressive stuff by this Montreal run defense. The secondary's great with Dequoy, Sutton. Beverette's a great linebacker who can play run, play pass coverage. It's a really good team, both sides of the football. And then how about the fresh maker, as I call him? It's funny, I joke with, I text every now and then with Davis Alexander because he was on my show last year. Really want him to do well. Obviously, great kid I support him.
Really
As long
is,
as he
yeah.
just doesn't do well against Hamilton, I always tell him you can do well against every other team, and I'll be happy for you. But I always say you got to call Jose Maltos, your kicker, the fresh maker, as a play on words from that old Mentos commercial from the '90s, because he's been great. He was nailed every kick, every extra point last week. I think he had what 6 field goals or 5 field goals last week against Ottawa. Very impressive stuff. I mean, there's very little holes in this Montreal team right now.
Hmm.
Edmonton, while I thought that on paper their defense coming into the year was better. I like that they brought Jake Seresna back on that side of the football from Toronto. In the first game, they were competitive with BC for a half, and then the second half, the defense kind of fell apart, and Nathan Rourke kind of had his way in the second half with that Edmonton defense, which on paper looks better, but clearly still going to take some time, I think. And as much as we know Mark Killam's been around as a special teams coordinator for many, many years in Calgary, this is still his first year as a CFL head coach. So he's still got the rookie label, if you will, beside his name as a head coach in this league. And it could be, just a little bit of an adjustment. The bottom line is Edmonton is a team that I think is going to be better in September and October than perhaps they are right now here in June going into July. Trey Ford, they've given him the number one job this year. I agree with giving him the chance, just because they've been screwing around with him too much the last couple of years and putting the likes of McLeod Bethel Thompson and Taylor Cornelius and these journeyman veteran quarterbacks ahead of him undeservedly. So the fact they've given Trey Ford, a Canadian quarterback, this chance is great. But the clock's ticking on him, Nick, because they've got Cody Fajardo backing up Trey Ford here in Edmonton now. And, while Mark Killam's saying he's our guy, Trey Ford, you still want to see progress and improvement. And he's still a work in progress. He's not a finished product, Trey Ford. Incredible athleticism, incredible mobility. You see him make that unbelievable play out of nowhere where he just turns around and just escapes the pocket, reverses track, and then ends up finding a receiver down the field. I mean, it's the kind of special plays that few can make, and Trey Ford can make those. But I find, Nick, when I watch him, his just stationary in the pocket passing accuracy has to get better. It has to improve. He's still got ways to go with that. Decision making at times can be a problem. He had, I think, a couple of interceptions in that loss to BC in week 1 that were throws that he probably shouldn't have made, throws that he would have wanted back. Now you do have the bye week. That is a pro for Edmonton here going into this game, and they're getting 7 points. So from a spot perspective, I understand that maybe Edmonton a little undervalued, maybe Montreal overvalued off the 2-0 start, and Montreal facing a Toronto team with no Chad Kelly and a lot of new faces on defense, and an Ottawa team with a backup quarterback last week and Matthew Schultz for Drew Brown, who was injured. So, Montreal's 2-0, and they've looked awesome and dominant, but they've also feasted on some vulnerable opponents here in the first 2 weeks. So I get the value with Edmonton. I was on Montreal's team total over in week 1 against Toronto, and I took Montreal money line last week against Ottawa, cashed both of them. I'm going to go with the Alouettes team total once again here in this spot, which you can find at 27.5. They scored 28 against Toronto in week 1. They scored 39 against Ottawa last week. And the great thing about betting Montreal's team total potentially this season, if the first 2 weeks are any indication, they don't just score on offense. They can score on defense. Look what we saw in the first 2 weeks. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown when they sacked Nick Arbuckle, scoop and score for Montreal after that for a touchdown. And then they got a pick 6 last week of Matthew Schultz in the win against Ottawa. So they've had a defensive touchdown, this Montreal Alouettes team, in each of their first 2 games. That certainly helps your cause if you're going to take the team total, as I am here. So for me, I'm going to take Montreal team total over 27.5. There is a chance of showers early in this game, but they're supposed to. The rain is supposed to taper off pretty quickly, and it'll be dry for the majority of the game. I would lean slightly to the over here, 48. I do think that, especially because Montreal, like I said, they can score on defense. And I think right now, Edmonton's offense might be a step ahead of their defense to begin the season. So slightly into the over, but the primary bet for me here is the Alouettes team total. Again, they've hit 28 plus in two games to start the year, each of their first 2 games. If they hit 28 points again, we're going to cash a ticket. So Montreal team total for me over 27.5. Nick, what's your thoughts here? First game of week 3, Montreal, Edmonton.
Well, you got to really look at Edmonton closely. Like, I'm going to take Montreal. Edmonton actually has the most talent on defense. The thing is they're young. They haven't learned how to play with each other yet. Once they do, I mean, that team is going to click.
Way more continuity, coaching continuity, personnel continuity on the Montreal side to begin the season.
Yeah. It's a bit more veteran seasoned. It's a bit more continuity. It's really conceptual. You can see what they're doing over there. Edmonton, though, I think you could see them really, really jive mid-end season. And I think they could be a dangerous team because by far they have the most talent on defense. It's not even close. So going with Montreal.
All right, Montreal as well here for Nick with this one. Should be an interesting game. Look, it is a nice spot for Edmonton. But I don't know how much I love the early season bye weeks in the CFL. Like, you play one game and then you're on a bye. Still very difficult, in my opinion, to gain rhythm and gain cohesion. And like I said, Montreal's just looked very, very good so far. It is 2 road games in a row for Montreal, but can you really call last week a road game for Montreal, Nick? I mean, you're going to Ottawa. It's like a little train trip down the railroad, right? You take the train to get there, essentially. Not much of not much travel there. So not a big back.
Going to probably finish first in the East, just based on the roster. It's not even the start. Playoffs, we'll see what happens, right? It's always interesting once things get going.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's move to Friday night football tonight. I'm addicted to singing it in the TSN style with the theme song. Saskatchewan and Toronto. Saskatchewan Roughriders, 3.5-point road favorites, 48 the total here in this game. Toronto's got issues, man. They're 0-2 straight up, 0-2 against the spread to begin the year. Losses to Ottawa last week, and then, of course, to Montreal, the first game of the season. Pretty good competition. Ottawa, we don't know, but Montreal's a tough game. But the problem for Ryan Dinwiddie is Chad Kelly's still out. Nick Arbuckle's at quarterback, and they have not received CFL Grey Cup MOP version of Nick Arbuckle this year. They have not. He has struggled. He's making mistakes. 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's a ratio that you don't want to see after the first 2 games. He's taken some sacks. The O-line's had protection issues here early on. They haven't been able to run the football. They look actually pretty bad at the moment. Now, it's 2 games, but they look horrible at the moment for cutting Kadeem Carey. And I'm still wondering why they did that. Because the McMahon and plus, I don't think there's another running back that they had last year that is no longer there either with the Argos. It's Adeboboye. Daniel Adeboboye. He's at Ottawa now. Excuse me. I told you. This sore throat. Bear with me. But
man, trust me, I get it. It's fires.
It's terrible. But Deontay McMahon and this Mayan Williams is the 2 running backs they've got. They haven't been able to run the football that well here early on so far this season. So the run game's not been good. And the defense is the bigger issue right now because the D-line's it's a rebuilt defensive line. They lost everybody from last year pretty much on that D-line. Arumalade and a bunch of others from that team last year that are gone. Multiple new starters in the secondary. And now to make matters worse, Nick, for that defense, guess who's injured this week and not playing? Winton McManus. And we know how good this guy is. Outstanding player. Linebacker that can do it all. Get after the QB. Play against the run. Drop back and play against the pass. He can do everything. Captain of the defense. He's already got 10 defensive tackles in 2 games this year for the Argos. And now he's injured and won't play Friday night against Saskatchewan. So you're already talking about a Toronto team struggling. Nick Arbuckle quarterback issues. Defense, new faces galore. And now you lose your best player by far on defense for this game. So I bet Saskatchewan early in the week. I got minus 140 on the money line. It's moved since then. minus 165, minus 170. Now, I don't love this spot, Nick, for Saskatchewan, simply because it's kind of like we talked about with Montreal. It's a team on the road for a second straight week. And in the case of the Rough Riders, it's a team that's going east for a second straight week. They were in Hamilton last week. They traveled back to Saskatchewan to Regina to practice this week. And now they're traveling back to Toronto for this game on Friday night. So it's not the greatest scheduling spot for the Riders. But I just think Toronto is too depleted, too many injuries to overcome it. Trevor Harris has looked very solid to begin the year. And to think about the fact that last week against Hamilton, they still won that game in spite of Brett Lawther having just a horrific day kicking. You know, he missed almost every field goal, missed multiple extra points in that game. But he's a good kicker still, I believe it. He's had bad days before, and he's bounced back and been better the next game. So I would expect that out of him here. So 3.5's tricky now to lay that with the Riders on the road more than a field goal. But I can't back Toronto, not with all these injuries and these struggles that they've got. 0-2 and all and now McManus, the leader of this defense, that could be the one that cripples them here in this game. So I think the Riders win. But I played it safe on the money line with that. Nick, what do you think here for Friday night, Riders and Argos?
Well, I think the first two games, very, very easy to say. I would say going to go with Saskatchewan on this. It's a quarterback-driven league. Anytime you have your quarterback out, it's always going to be tough. I think Saskatchewan does a lot of great things. They disguise a lot of things really well, especially on the offensive side of the ball, field side. It's pretty good, honestly, especially I think even with guys like Picton on the field side, keeping the leverage close to the quarterback. They really sneak them in there sometimes, and they got a lot of talent in that receiving corps, but their Canadian talent, they do some really good things with them. And Harris seems to just kind of jive. Backfield as well. I think Harris has done a great job this year coming in. Those guys are looking solid. Definitely going to have to go with Saskatchewan. Toronto's going to be in tough. Starting linebacker out, starting quarterback, best player on defense. It's a quarterback-driven league. Again, got to go with Saskatchewan.
Yeah, as far as that goes, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's just too much right now for the Argos to overcome. Keep an eye now. The Riders do have some injuries. I do want to point that out, but it's nowhere near as bad as Toronto's injury report going into this game. And when you look at for the Riders, that Sean Bain's been out for the first two games. They do miss him, but they've managed to move the football and through the air without him. He's out once again. They will miss Samuel Emilus, the great receiver. He's out for this game. So that does hurt them a little bit as far as that's concerned. But they've still, you mentioned Mitchell Picton, a guy that's very, very capable of stepping up for the Riders. He's done so in the past at that receiving core. You look at what else they're going to have. They like the Myers, who's played well. They've got Keyshawn Johnson, who's also stepped up and given this Duncan Busby. All of a sudden, last week against Hamilton, he's making some big plays, catching the football. And, of course, they have Nokia and Schaefer-Baker still as well. But the guy that's taking the spot of Emilus, who's out this week, is a kid named Joe Robustelli. It's a crazy story. This guy just came to the CFL. He didn't even start playing football until he was well into his teenage years. Only started a few years ago, but played at some small college. Was incredible. Got the opportunity. Saskatchewan said, no, kick the tires on this kid. Apparently, he was one of their best receivers in preseason and training camp for the Riders, this Robustelli. And he's going to be on the field taking the spot of Emilus here, and they like him. So he had a great preseason game, I remember. The second preseason game. He was making plays, big catches, great hops in the open field. So that might be someone that maybe comes in there and makes a difference for Saskatchewan. We'll see. And I know the quarterback, Trevor Harris, has said good things about him.
Mm-hmm. That's the CFL, though. I mean, you look at all the guys, a lot of these Americans, because the ratio, 49 to 51% dress ratio. A lot of these guys, the bar is set where they're just waiting for their time. And there's been tons of young guys. Some of them have sat in the practice roster for a year just because of, veterans, everything else, just waiting for their time. It's so competitive. Even a guy like Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson was a good receiver when he was with the Arizona Cardinals. He was a good draft pick for them. I don't know what happened. Excuse me. I really liked him out of college. I'm surprised he's in the CFL because I thought he would have gotten his opportunity in the NFL. That's a good receiver. Definitely, again, going back to, I think Saskatchewan's going to, kick the tires down in this game.
All right, we turn to Saturday where we have a doubleheader starting with Ottawa, Calgary. Calgary Stampeders, 2-point home favorites, 50 the total here at McMahon Stadium. 2-0 Calgary, 0-2 Ottawa, obviously, to begin the year. Drew Brown missed last week. Matthew Schultz played, and he struggled against Montreal. I was hoping coming into this week that Drew Brown would be back. And had Drew Brown been back this week for Ottawa at quarterback, I think I was going to buy low and take Ottawa here in this game, in this spot. Because you look at their first 2 weeks, Nick, they played Saskatchewan on the road in week 1. Pretty tough way to start the year. They played Montreal last week with your backup quarterback. No wonder you're 0-2. But you played tough competition, and you didn't have your number 1 quarterback last week, Drew Brown. And Montreal and Saskatchewan are really good teams, and I picked them. I picked that as my Grey Cup, Saskatchewan, Montreal this year. So I'm not shocked Ottawa lost those 2 games. And those are good teams. No shame in losing those games. I came into this game thinking that Ottawa would be taking a big step down in class here against Calgary compared to Montreal and Saskatchewan, even though Calgary is 2-0. And Vernon Adams makes them a lot better at quarterback than they were last year under Jake Mayer, who was brutal. You couldn't come back with Jake Mayer as the quarterback this year. They had to go out and upgrade. Calgary did, bringing in Vernon Adams. But look what Calgary faced. They faced, obviously, in their first game, Hamilton, who aren't very good in my opinion, and I have no problem saying that, even though I'm a Ticat fan, and it hurts me to say that. You played Hamilton in week 1. And you played Toronto in week 2 last week with Nick Arbuckle, not Chad Kelly at quarterback, who have struggled to begin the year. And so basically Calgary's 2-0 against teams that are now a combined 0-4 to begin the year. Toronto's 0-2, Hamilton's 0-2. Those are the 2 teams Calgary beat. I'm not sold Calgary's great just yet, especially on defense. I think they're a lot better on offense, although terrible news with Reggie Bagleton, man. 6-game injured list. Best receiver, got injured last week against Toronto. He'll be out indefinitely. And they are a lot better on offense with Vernon Adams Jr., there's no question. The defense still, you're talking about 75% of that defense with new faces this year. I think it's still going to be an adjustment period on that side of the football. We saw signs of it at times against Hamilton, especially later in the game. Hamilton's offense finally got rolling a bit. And then we saw it late in the game last week against Toronto, where Nick Arbuckle by far had his most success. He hasn't had much success in his first 2 games for Toronto, but he did finally move the football and have some success against that Calgary defense in the second half last week against Toronto, even though they still fell short and lost that game. So I still have questions about the Calgary defense. I was lining up to take, and Ottawa's defense still is not that great. We've seen them get lit up the first 2 games. Saskatchewan put up over 30 against them. Montreal, 39 points against them, albeit one of those touchdowns that Montreal had was a defensive touchdown, but it's still not a great Ottawa defense. So I was lined up to take Ottawa if Drew Brown was playing here and the over, but Drew Brown's not going to play. Dustin Crum is going to be the starting quarterback because Drew Brown's not ready yet. They're not going to go back to Schultz because Schultz struggled. They're going to give Dustin Crum this chance. I question if it's much of an upgrade from Matthew Schultz going to Dustin Crum. I think he's 2-11 in his last 13 games where he's either started or played for Ottawa. That's not good. And if you remember, Dustin Crum burst onto the scene a few years ago. And when he first got the chance to start, he was wowing everybody, with his mobility. He could run with the football, and he was doing a lot of his damage running the ball. But defenses adjust. And lately when Dustin Crum plays, defenses are containing him in the pocket, not letting him escape, not letting him get full throttle down the field running it, and they are forcing him to be a pocket passer. They're forcing him to make throws in the pocket, and he's not been great doing that. His accuracy's been questioned. He's had some bad interceptions, bad decisions. He's underthrown receivers. He's overthrown receivers. It's just been the whole gamut of issues throwing the football for Dustin Crum the last couple of years when he's gotten the opportunity to play for Ottawa. So I worry about that here. Like, is he going to be any sort of upgrade from Schultz? So that's why I don't want to. I've scaled back from taking Ottawa because of that. Dustin Crum being in, and I was leaning over, but I then look at the weather forecast for Calgary on Saturday. Nick, they're calling for 100% chance of rain and 50 km/h, 30 mile/h wind gusts in Calgary for Saturday. And that is not over weather. Like I've always said, I don't mind the rain. I'll still look for points to be scored in games where there's rain, as long as the rain's not going to be a downpour. But when you start to get that wind going, 30 mile/h winds, 50 km/h wind gusts for this game on Saturday in the forecast, that's where I draw the line and say, I don't think I can bet an over anymore, knowing what the weather could be Saturday, especially with the wind in Calgary on Saturday. So I was leaning Ottawa and the over. To be honest with you, I lean completely the other way now. Calgary and the under. Like, this total's high, 50. If the weather's going to be as bad as it could be on Saturday, 100% chance of rain and over 30 mile/h wind gusts, how are these teams going to effectively move the football in conditions like that? Not to mention, I've got big concerns about whether Dustin Crum's going to be any good and move this football for Ottawa, given the struggles we've seen out of him. So I was lined up to take Ottawa in the over, and it's definitely a stay away game for me as of right now. I'll be watching it, but no bet as of right now. We'll see how it plays out. But disappointing, because I thought this was going to be a good spot to buy low on Ottawa. I just don't know if I trust Dustin Crum enough. I was hoping for Drew Brown, and we're not going to get him. Nick, what do you think here? Ottawa, Calgary.
Well, first and foremost, there's been some weird weather in Alberta. I was getting some texts even yesterday. It's been monsoons, even, east of Edmonton, around the Edmonton area. So maybe it's just moving south, but there's been some pretty bad thunderstorms. It's not really home field advantage. You hit that factor in there. This game's tough because there's injuries on both sides. I'm going to go with the Calgary Stampeders on this game. It's close. Both teams are a little banged up. Ottawa's traveling. They've had it tough a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the Stamps on this game, just based on the dynamics, for sure.
Yeah, I can't argue that. They're 2-0. They've looked solid. I still worry about their defense, but maybe Dustin Crum's not the candidate to exploit that here in this game, especially if the weather's going to be shitty, which is a very real possibility.
You can do a lot of things with Dustin Crum. Obviously, RPO is that's common.
Yeah. It's going to become an RPO offense. It should, because that's what you should be doing with that guy. Yep.
Yeah, that's his strength. Same as Strevy, same type of quarterback.
Plus, you might be relegated to run the football a lot if the wind's going to be as bad to go with the rain in Calgary. And that's what they're calling for. It sounds like it's going to be pretty horrific conditions for this game on Saturday here in Calgary. And that's the big concern with what I was liking initially, which was the over in this game and Ottawa. But like I said, I've definitely scaled back on those two opinions right now. So I have not moved yet on this game, and I'm not so sure I will. Before Saturday, as of right now. All right, let's get to our final game for week 3. This is also Saturday. This is the Saturday night game. Winnipeg, BC, for the second straight week. The Bombers and the Lions, a rematch of last week, where Winnipeg won 34-20 against BC last week in Winnipeg. Of course, we know they've played well at home for years. Princess Auto Stadium, as they now call it, in Winnipeg. No Zach Collaros, no problem last week. Chris Trevler, that to me, Nick, I'll say this right now. That's the best I've seen Chris Trevler throw the football in the CFL. Not even an issue. You can't even discuss it or debate it. That is the best I've seen him throw the football last week.
No, I thought he looked really good for the Jets in preseason a few years ago when he was their preseason MVP. But I really, really think that that was his stride that game. He does a lot of, similar to Crum, RPO, runs around, does it really well, but he can take it up the middle. He's a bit stronger than Crum. He's a big body. Obviously, he was a receiver in college at University of Minnesota before he transferred to South Dakota to play quarterback to get his time. But he does a lot of good things. I would not be shocked. Caleros is going to be there long term, but that's a guy that they probably have future plans for, if not other teams, when his contract is up, because he looked probably, as far as quarterback play goes, probably the best. Everyone knows he can run. That was definitely his best game since he's been in the CFL.
Yeah, no question. Throwing the ball, I thought he was good. I thought he had a perfect touch on his passes, more accuracy, better decision making. I thought it was everything for Chris Strevler and why he played well, and maybe the best game he's played throwing the ball in a CFL game. Definitely a CFL start. I know I've not seen him throw the ball better than he did last week. So give him credit. 34 points. And amazing that Winnipeg lost Brady Oliveira, last year's most outstanding player, to injury. And last I checked, he's not playing in this game, already ruled out. And yet they didn't skip a beat, which maybe is an indictment on the BC defense, that Brady Oliveira exits the game and Matthew Peterson comes in and he has 130 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown for the Bombers last week. What an outstanding performance entering the game for Oliveira. You think, geez, he's irreplaceable, Oliveira. But no, if you are overpowering your opponent at the line of scrimmage and opening up holes, and that O-line was able to do it for Winnipeg, you can still run the football even if you lose your number one running back. And it was proven last week with Matthew Peterson's performance, no doubt. Obviously, it's an interesting dynamic because Strevler's played by far the best game throwing the ball he's played in his career. But because Zach Collaros' one-game suspension has now been served, Mike O'Shea's going back to Zach Collaros here, and he'll be the starting quarterback for week. I don't know if I love that. You gained a little rhythm here with Strevler. Normally, it's an upgrade. No questions asked when you're talking Chris Strevler to Zach Collaros. And it probably long-term still is. But here's my comeback on that, the caveat. Zach Collaros last year, he wasn't just off to begin the season. He was really bad. The first month of the season, he struggled. And it took him until, I would say, week 5 or 6 to get going and look like the Zach Collaros MOP candidate, Grey Cup champion quarterback that we've seen all these years. Now you're taking him out of the mix here. One-game suspension. Didn't really practice as much as he normally would in training camp, then lead up to week 1 when Strevler played. And now all of a sudden you're just putting him back in there. Fewer reps, fewer practice reps. Is he going to be in rhythm and in great form right away, immediately? I'm not totally sold on that. And you got to think BC's defense is looking to step things up here, play better. They know they weren't good on defense last week. And now back home at BC Place Stadium, they're going to be looking for a better result here, BC, especially from that defense. A lot of weapons to deal with. Dalton Schoen's looked great already. Nick Dembski, keep an eye on this guy. He was great in preseason. He's getting more opportunity now in the regular season for Winnipeg. Carrick Wheatfall, this guy has really come on for them as a receiver that's been dangerous. So keep an eye on him. Meanwhile, for BC, and like I said, Oliveira's out for Winnipeg again. But for BC, it looks like this week, we still question marks about Nathan Rourke. He left that game last week against Winnipeg to injury. They have been using both Rourke and Jeremiah Masoli in practice this week. Buck Pierce, head coach of the Lions, using both quarterbacks. So not really showing his hand and tilting it to one direction or another who's going to start here. But it could be Rourke. It could be Jeremiah Masoli. And if it is Jeremiah Masoli, let's say Rourke can't play this week. For one game, Masoli can come in there and play well. He's a veteran. He's been around this league for a long time now, and he's had enough practice reps. He could come in there and be solid enough to maybe help BC here in this game for a one-game situation. Obviously, you want Rourke long-term. He's the guy with the higher upside and just the better overall arm talent and all that as a quarterback and athleticism, the whole bit. But Masoli has been around the block a long time, and he can come in for one game and be solid for you. So it wouldn't shock me that if Masoli gets the start, he plays okay. The way I view this is I liked BC initially in this spot, revenge spot, looking to play better after losing in Winnipeg, back home at BC Place Stadium. They're a 3-point home underdog, actually 3.5 in some spots. I took BC here plus 3.5. And my thought process is if it's Jeremiah Masoli at quarterback for BC, I'm still cool with it, taking BC here. Because I think for one game, he can come in and play well. And I'm not convinced Kolaros is, hitting the ground running in his first start of the year after he started slowly last year. But let's say Nathan Rourke suddenly gets practice later, practice reps either today or tomorrow, and they rule that he's good to go and he's going to play. If that happens and they rule that Rourke's going to play, this line's going to move on BC. You're not going to get 3.5. This will close closer to a pick 'em in this game, and the money will come in on BC if Nathan Rourke is ruled in and he's playing. So I'm locking in BC at a good number. Obviously, I prefer Rourke plays, gives them the better chance at quarterback. But even if it's Jeremiah Masoli, I feel confident enough. BC could be either right in this game, field goal game, worst case scenario, and still able to get the win because Masoli's been in this program now long enough. Defense, I think, is capable of playing better. I think at home they will, much like they did against Edmonton when they won against the Elks in week 1. So I'm going to take BC here in this spot. At home, catching points, getting the 3.5. I'm also grabbing a small over bet in this game, the total at 50.5, because if Rourke is in, the total is going to go up a little bit too. That's just what's going to happen. And I can always, if Rourke is ruled in and the total goes up, and I could always buy back some of the under the other way a little bit. So a little bit on the over just because I think that if Rourke is ruled in, the total will go up. But like I said, I like BC here, regardless of who starts for them. I think it's a good spot, good price, good number on the BC Lions, regardless of whether it's Nathan Rourke or Jeremiah Masoli, who starts for them at quarterback on Saturday night at BC Place. Nick, what do you think here? Rematch of last week, Winnipeg, BC.
They both know each other, but I got to go with Winnipeg. Reason being, it's the way Winnipeg plays. They're just in sync. I mean, they look stronger than they did last year. I think they're going to take the West as well. I think BC and Winnipeg are definitely the top teams, in my opinion.
It hasn't been a bad pick the last few years, taking Winnipeg to win the West. Yeah, I've only done it 4 years in a row, right?
The way they play. Matty P, we all saw what he could do at U Sports firsthand.
He was impressive. Yep, he was. So even if Oliveira's not playing, he came in and he got 130 rushing yards. You can't overlook that. You can't ignore that.
He steal from what they got for him in a trade. I was like, oh my goodness, man, what? Like, how did they pull that off? And then he rips that. I'm surprised. Like, he fell a little late in the draft as well. I definitely think that Brady's the guy. Gonna have to go with Winnipeg. I think that receiving corps is it's pretty good. They've had a lot of receivers there that are still there over the years. Obviously, they lost Lawler to Hamilton. You gotta just be like, it's Winnipeg. They come out every year. But this game specifically, there's not too many injuries. Mazzoli from Rourke, similar style. I would definitely have to go with Winnipeg, though, at this one. I think they're going to roll pretty strong. You can definitely tell that they're playing with a fire after that Grey Cup loss, and they look like...
That is a great point. That is an excellent point. They looked like a team that were entered this season with the sting of that Grey Cup loss against Toronto, and they came out like, hey, let's atone for it. Yep.
No, it's... Yep. And the thing, like, they're very similar. And, like, I don't know a lot about hockey. Obviously my grandfather.
They are 6-1 against BC the last 7 meetings. So
yeah.
There's no doubt they played BC well. Yep.
Strong hockey background. But Winnipeg has a lot of similar characteristics in their team that Paul Maurice, like, they remind me just like they just play and they just click. Like it's always been, you hear it all the time about O'Shea's guys, but it's team first. It's that locker room. And you can see it. Like, they don't panic. Like, I don't care what people say. Okay, so what? They've won 2 Grey Cups out of 5 Grey Cups, but they've been in the big game every year. I'd call it a dynasty. I don't care. I mean, it's going to be the Grey Cup here again in Winnipeg, not to get too far off topic, but you can tell, like, I think we both agree after that Grey Cup loss, this team just looks like they're just playing with that chip, with that fire right now. If it's not Brady, it's going to be Matt P. If it's not going to be Caleros, it's going to be Strevler. And that defense returned a lot of dudes, and they got some dudes. They're playing, and it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be another close game, but I think Winnipeg's going to come away with it.
All right, close one. Winnipeg, though, gets it done, says Nick, as far as this game is concerned. And yes, Winnipeg has been ruling the West for a while, off to a great start. We'll see if they can keep it rolling here against BC. Never easy to beat the same team twice in 2 straight weeks or 2 straight games, but certainly Winnipeg, very capable of it. But I do like the value with BC, especially at the 3.5. I thought that was worth a look because I think we're going to get a better effort here from BC. Again, but keep an eye on the quarterback situation. We think Dustin Crum is starting for Ottawa. Pretty sure of that. We don't know yet with Rourke and Masoli which one it's going to be for BC. So that's something you're going to have to certainly keep a close eye on as we get closer to a kickoff on Saturday. All right, great stuff. Let's wrap it up. We got best bets to wrap things up here on this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. We'll start as always with our guest. In this case, Nick Pankhurst. Great to have him back on the show once again. Your favorite pick this week, Nick? What would it be?
Winnipeg and BC game back to back. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think they know each other obviously very well. 2 very skilled teams. I think that's going to be the game to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, like in Winnipeg, it's my best bets actually. We're going to go a little head-to-head here. I don't mind that one bit. That's what makes the show go around, makes it fun. I'm going to go BC plus 3.5. I really like this spot. I like the number. I like the fact I think the Lions will play better here at home. Let's not forget, too, about Winnipeg. I'm just going to go back and look at their schedule last year, but I know off the top of my head last year with Winnipeg, they were not always dependable on the road. You know, they had some instances where on the road they struggled, and early in the season they really struggled. They struggled overall early in the season, but, you know, in the month of June they lost both of their road games to Ottawa and Calgary to begin the year as favorites. They went 0-4 straight up in ATS to begin last year, and 0-2 straight up in ATS last year to begin the season on the road as well. In fact, actually the road record to begin the year last year, they were 0-4 straight up and ATS to begin the season on the road last year, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So, look, Princess Auto Stadium, they play some great football, and they're still a great team, capable of winning on the road. But I think in this spot, just a little overvalued, laying out now 3.5 in some spots here against BC on the road. So I will go with the BC Lions here, regardless of who's at quarterback. This is best bet material, regardless of whether it's Nathan Rourke or whether it's Jeremiah Masoli. If it's Masoli, this line will stay put, or maybe even more Winnipeg money comes in and you'll get a better number. And if Rourke is ruled in, then you can have the 3.5 now in your pocket, and you're going to get a better number closer to kick. Or the money's going to come in on BC, and you're going to have locked in the best number on BC right now at 3.5 if Nathan Rourke plays on Saturday night. So BC plus 3.5 against Winnipeg for my best bet for CFL Week 3 on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Nick, great stuff. Great to catch up. Any last words before we wrap up the show? And we got to wrap it up because my voice is just hanging by a thread right now.
I hear as well right now. Thanks for having me as always. It's always a great experience on this show. You do a great job, like the way you're growing every year, and you're really doing your thing, and you're very well informed. So thanks for having me again.
And keep doing your thing as well out on the scouting trail. out west in Western Canada for the University of Toronto Varsity Blues. Good stuff indeed. Great show. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button on the way out. For Nick Pankhurst, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy CFL Week 3, and good luck. And we will be back with you next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.